got to build this bridge by this date. Otherwise, we're not going to get paid for the contract and it's going to reflect badly on us building future bridges and whatever. Even within that, there's scope to allow the individuals to express themselves, to be wholly in the project as opposed to serving a function that has been defined in a box for them just to do. I've been told to do that, I will go in and do it. You know how motivating that is? Not at all.
This is Dear Work, the podcast that's part breakup letter to outdated workplaces and part love letter to what work could be. My name is Matthew Cameron, and back in 2019, I hit rock bottom. I almost took my own life, and well, work had a lot to do with it. It flipped my entire perspective of what work should be, because let's face it, right now, both sides are losing. People are continuing to burn out, while companies are throwing money at solutions that don't work. And well, it's just broken. Let's get to work.
Hey Colin, and welcome to the Dear Work podcast. I feel like we're going to have a really wonderful chat today. You're the founder of Virtuosity, a performance habit training business, and the co-creator of BratLab, which is a habit change research database. Plus, you may also be the world's only behaviour change actuary, which is pretty cool. You may need to explain that one for me.
I keep claiming it, and nobody else has stood up and said, no, I do it too. So as far as I'm aware, I still am the only one.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness, right? So
exactly. Stick the claim, stick the flag in, and if anybody wants to come and take it, they're welcome to.
Fair enough. But it's clear that you're quite passionate about helping people and practice behaviors that both serve them and their businesses. So tell me your story. How'd you end up here? How are you using this unique combination of expertise to now crafting a business focused on habit change?
It's a long story. I'll try and keep it as condensed as I can. I'm a wanderer by nature. I think I must have some kind of gypsy blood in me. I haven't managed to find it in the family tree, but I have meandered to where I am now, and I expect to keep meandering. The actuarial part of what I do is core, it's critical. I'm proud of my profession, but I seem to spend an awful lot of my life trying to find a different way to apply it than everybody else who becomes an actuary does. So that's why I've taken this rather unique position. I guess the bit that matters really started for me when I left the UK in 1995 and went to South Africa, which at that time was a very exciting nation. Nelson Mandela was just out of prison and being elected president, and was a melting pot for a new way of being, opportunity and whatever. And I was lucky enough to be part of that. Went for 3 years, stayed for 13. During that period, I discovered how to be an entrepreneur, and that's obviously shaped what I've become now. I became part of a startup business. That was then acquired by somebody, or an organisation who was led by somebody who became a crucial part of my life, was Andrew Sykes. And we worked together for 5 frenetic years. And the reason that was important, because that was the first time I sat down with somebody and said, we're actuaries at that stage trying to address healthcare inflation. The question we asked ourselves was, why is this well-being thing not working? Why are all these great ideas are not manifesting in a changing result for health insurance? And we both went our separate directions. I came back to the UK. He went across to the US. And I started a career with what was then Hewitt Associates, and it was very much back to my actuarial roots and what have you. But as I went through life there, my passion for health and well-being kept bubbling up, and I ended up as my final role as the head of global health and well-being there. But in the process, discovered why I enjoyed the entrepreneurial bit so much, and the big world of Aon and trying to achieve the goals that I was trying to achieve were just not well suited. So I put the surrender flag up and put my name out there, and who should call but Andrew. And that led to us at that stage in 2013. We developed the BratLab research database. Myself and my current partner in Virtuosity, Hanley van Veek. That has become the foundation stone for my life and career. Understanding for the first time in my life how and why human beings behave in a certain way, and why we find it so difficult to change and do something different and adopt something that's good for us. That was that. The relationship with Hanley in 2019, we bought out the intellectual property that we'd created. We went in another, and that has led to Virtuosity and where we are now.
Amazing. You touched on it a couple of times there, and I just want to be blunt with this question. So what is the problem with well-being? What's the problem with workplace well-being?
The problem with it is it does not properly take into account the way in which human beings change. So there is a lot that can be done in an educational sense to make people aware of what they should be doing. There's a lot of shoulding in relation to well-being. If you do this, things will be better. Yes, they will, but how do I do it? And people react, and sometimes react quickly and do something different. But the sustainability of that change is what challenges us. Creating a habit rather than a behavioral shift, which is temporary, is where things go wrong, particularly in the corporate world. So there are well-meaning organizations. There are certainly a very lot of well-meaning HR professionals and so on who look at this. And because of the shape of the way businesses function, they are looking for a plug-and-play solution. They want a benefit. They want a program that can change the way in which people behave in relation to their health and well-being. And they'd love to do that because some of the more enlightened ones might understand that actually that has performance benefits as well. But it gets played out as a benefit within a context, and the context is that of the business. And the business is not one that says, we support health and well-being here. Health and well-being is not the way we do things. So it becomes a sticking plaster, an add-on to a system of doing things, a way of doing things, call it culture if you will, which makes it an attempt to fix rather than a fundamental element of what the organization is, the way in which the organization wants to be. So fundamentally, why wellbeing has gone through the journey of being a solution to a problem, being deployed as a benefit or program in an attempt to fix that without actually, it's fixing the symptoms, not the underlying cause. And that's where the grand challenge comes, because it does mean, you organizationally, you've got to go about fixing the culture before you can actually help people to live a healthy lifestyle. It has to be a natural way to behave and respond to other individuals in the organization, for it to be something that you can then deploy a benefit program or whatever to help people engage in the programs that they actually want to do, because it's part of what you do. So that for me is the essence of it. I don't know if that resonates with you.
It does. Makes me think of the Fleming study that came out of Oxford at the start of this year, that basically showed, a lot of these benefits that businesses are spending a lot of time and a lot of money. Like the workplace wellbeing and industry is huge, but a lot of these interventions, your meditation apps, your gym memberships, your resilience trainings, these sorts of things, they essentially came back from this study, and it showed that they all essentially did almost nothing without that systemic organizational change that you mentioned. These things are just a band-aid. They're a benefit. They're not a solution to the well-being conversation or the well-being equation. They're something to tick a box and say we've done something, but it's not actually looking at the cause of the problem. Say you do have a highly stressful work environment and you give someone a meditation app. It doesn't mean they're going to use it. That there's another study, I believe Deloitte, showing that I think 68% of people don't even use the resources that are given to them by their employer. So that's one problem. They may not use it, but then how is that going to fix the environment? They then the next day will go back into that same stressful environment, and maybe they meditate for a week and they have great results from that, but in 2 weeks time, in 3 weeks time, they're probably more likely to reach for a bottle of wine than they are to continue meditating, because they realize that each day they're going into the same environment, the same workplace that is causing these issues, and it's not them that's the problem. The meditation apps, it's there to help them be a better version of themselves, but it's not actually them that's the problem. It's the workplace that's the problem, and there's that disconnect. So how do we bridge that divide? This is a lot behind the work I do, and I believe a lot of the work you do as well. Like, how do we bridge that divide between getting things that actually work and creating an environment that does actually help people, does fulfill people, does create a workplace that works for both the employer and the employee?
So many ways to answer that question. The essence of some of what I've said already hints at cultural type things, and then you have to understand what culture is, and if we let ourselves understand that the culture is the way that we do things around here, if the way we do things around here is one that creates stress and anxiety for individuals, the nature of whatever you do to try and plug a benefit in is not going to work. So what do you need to do? You need to get to the heart of the way we do things around here. The standard response to that is, Colin, that's too hard. That's, where do we go with that? And for me, and just that's where our passion comes in the sense, well, it is actually possible because it's around context and influence. There are things that shape the way in which we behave and the way in which we feel on a day-to-day basis, which are not often, they're not visible in a traditional sense. They might be actually literally visible, but we don't know that they're influencing us. They're quietly going on in the background, but they're extremely powerful. Culture is kind of the culmination of all those things. So if you think from an organizational perspective, when you walk into the reception of an organization, you start talking to people in that organization, you will get a very good feel quite quickly of what it's like to be there, to work there. You'll get a sense, where's that coming from? It's coming from what you see, from the spaces that surround you, from the way in which people respond to you, a social interaction, the way in which you're treated, the processes that you go through, the systems that you go through, and the individuals themselves. So those contextual influences, which we categorize as the self, the individual, the social element, the interaction, the influence that people around us have, the physical space, the way in which the buildings that we're in and the Zoom world, what's behind us, things influence us all the time from a visual perspective, and then the systems of policies, procedures, the culture, country level legislation, all these things set guide rails for us. If you think about the way in which, and let's talk about it at an organizational level rather than anything else, because I think that's where we're both most interested in going to work and where change can happen. If an organization wants genuinely to create an environment for their people that allows them to be healthy, and as a consequence of being healthy, be high performance, be less stressed, means they reduce the turnover rates, increase the engagement levels, raise innovation levels, performance levels, and so on, then it's about taking a look at how you influence employees that walk through the door from day one as you recruit and embed employees and go through the induction process. What shape are you creating for them to step into and to start performing? Once they're in, how do they interact? Using the well-being example that we've talked about at the beginning, if we are going in and trying to get a well-being program that works, that says, oh, let's put the gym on site, we're going to invest big money. By the way, there's no ROI in it. But that's the actuary speaking rather than the good wellness professional. There's other ways to achieve the same thing. But let's say we put the gym on site and, nobody's going because everybody, lunchtime, everybody gets up to go and the boss goes, you finish what you should be doing, and your colleagues all go, oh, where's he going? He just need a sandwich at the desk, and that's what we do. So if the influence that is affecting the way people are behaving is against the behavior you're trying to introduce, however successful you are in the beginning, it's going to fall flat over time as people revert to the way that is naturally determined by the context in which they work.
So there's a lot there, and for some it may be a little overwhelming. And even words like culture, it's like, all right, where do I start? Where do I start? And I want to get your opinion on where that initial starting point is. I feel like I from my opinion, I'm going to use the bookcase behind me as a bit of a prop for the first time in this podcast series. But
Okay.
I have this book here, and I know pretty much everyone's read it at this point, and it's a great book. If you've not read it, definitely should. But I feel the approach to self-development and that book covers is a really good way to start this conversation. You don't get big and strong at the gym by going once. You've just got to keep turning up. So if we were to, I don't want to say simplify this conversation, but if we want to break it down to its easiest first steps, where do people start? Because words like culture and well-being, they're big, they're buzzwords. There's 17,000 million things that go into them. So where can people just start?
As the actuary and the consultant, I want to say start with understanding, knowing where you are right now, which means doing some kind of a diagnostic. And for there, you need to choose a framework, and whether it's James Clear's or ours or somebody else's, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're accepting that there are influences at play in the workplace, then choosing from that an area to focus on and to go, because you're right, you cannot eat the elephant in one go. You've got to take it one mouthful at a time, and that's the whole atomic habits principle of break it down into bite-sized chunks and do something that is achievable, the Goldilocks level. It's not too challenging so that you're striving too hard and you're going to fail consistently. It's not so easy that you fool yourself that you've actually achieved something you haven't. It's that level between the two that is just right. It's challenging, and it's rewarding to achieve it, and it's a change that's going forward. But then there's the whole process of reinforcement. So let me get not too far on the track. You started talking about the start. Diagnostic, understand where you are. Where are you strong in areas of influence that might be leveraged in order to make this journey easy for you? There may be some really quick wins that are in the system already that you can celebrate and use to reinforce the direction of travel you want to go in. The second then is not to get overambitious, but equally don't oversimplify it. Please don't just assume that you can then plug and play one little thing, which comes back to the point that I want to make: purpose and vision. Motivational, gives direction of travel, keeps you aligned and on track. So if we start doing anything, where is it you want to go? What do you want to achieve and why? Who's on board with this journey organizationally? If you haven't got the key leadership team on board in a vision and purpose sense, where are we going and why are we going there? We might add on the phrase, well, what do we expect to get out of it once we achieve that thing? But getting alignment to the purpose and moving along in that direction, I think, is a very crucial first step. And be honest, if you sit in the room with the executive team and you are the only one that's shouting about it, you're on the wrong track, and you're going to have to either find a different way of doing it or something else to do that will push things forwards. For me, the understanding from the diagnostic, if it matters, if it gets to that kind of thing and you need a business case, then the actuary in me says there is a business case. The stuff that we're talking about is not just important from humanity perspective in terms of the way in which your employees turn up at the workplace. It's not just the right thing to do for them, it's the right thing to do for the business. And there's plenty of evidence to prove, solid evidence to prove that. It's not always in the most consumable format. For the Brat Lab research, I read, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of research texts. I do wish they could write them in a plain English and make it more accessible to all of us. There is good research out there which will help prove that there is a business case for doing the right thing, so that it could be part of that initial step. But for the main thing for me is getting alignment, getting people on board, and then setting a sequence of steps. Follow the atomic habits principle of not doing something too ambitious. Find something that's that Goldilocks ideal and move forward towards that.
I'm really glad you brought up, purpose there and understanding who you are as a company, because I feel like it's a really important, step in all of this. Every business that has ever started will, have probably taken some time to look at their brand. It's, they're building their brand from day one. Who do they want to be? Who do they want the world to see them as a company? And for me, like, culture's just an internal brand. It's how do you want your people to see and feel about your company? It's similar sort of principles. And I think maybe businesses wait a little bit too long to start thinking about this. It's something once they begin to grow. But I think any business, whether you're one person, two people, or even at that very early stage startup, 5 people, it's never too early to think, you know, who are we as a company? Who do we want to be as a company? What do we want to do? If we want to grow and if we are ambitious, what does our company look like at 10 people, at 20 people, at 50 people? How does that look? Because you can start creating that from those very first stages. And I think it's important from that internal branding perspective to think about these things from the very early stage, because once you hit 20 people, it's hard to then go back and be like, all right, what are we? Who are we? How do we fit people in? It becomes so much more difficult there. And I think the really interesting point around, your company purpose that you touched on, it's, how can you help people understand, the purpose that they can give to your company if you don't understand the purpose of your company in itself? So it's a super great point that you made there.
And you're alluding to the point, but how little that's understood or thought about in intention. It's often, why we're here to create widgets. Actually, no, you're not. There is a greater purpose that's more inspiring, more motivational than that. And getting to the bottom of that. I mean, the biggest area of business, and it speaks to that journey you're talking about, us, is when businesses kind of reach that tipping point when the CEO founder can't actually name every single person in his business anymore. And you've lost contact then. And if you've not defined your purpose by that point, you're going to be calling on somebody like us to come in and help find it, fix it, and do the retrospective. If you've done that, as you say, when there was 20 employees, 30 employees, and so on, when everybody knows each other and gathers regularly outside of the business, and it's that pull together, then it wouldn't be a big challenge at that point in time to find it and hook onto it and use it as the North Star, the guiding light for the organization.
North Star's a really good phrase, and I love it when it comes to this topic. There is one thing you mentioned a little while back that I wanna touch on quickly, and it's not a very nice question, but you mentioned when you do start these things, don't try and jump on something too difficult. Don't start something too challenging, but also don't find that really easy win that doesn't actually mean much or do much. You're almost, in sort of a very nice way of saying it, you're almost just patting yourself on the back thinking, we've done this, we've done culture, we've ticked that box, done well-being, everyone go and work now. Do you think on a base level that some companies view benefit packages and remuneration as ticking those well-being and culture boxes? Like, we've done the things, we've given our people the stuff, now go to work?
It's a tough question. I think, unfortunately, the answer is yes. It's going to be difficult because I guess almost by definition, people listening to this podcast are more open to the possibility that might be the case. If you're hearing this kind of message for the first time, then that's great. But unfortunately, the way in which the world of work works, organizations, people see, in an entrepreneurial sense, the opportunity to plug a gap. Because complexity is difficult, we create a heuristic, which is a simple plug-in to apparently solve, and then we use a bundle of ROI statistics to say, if this happens, then look at the outcomes that this can create. Unfortunately, it is a simple attempt to solve a very complex issue, which we're we're alluding to. And not complex in the sense it can't be solved. It's just got to be thought about a little bit, taking a step back before jumping into the solutions. So, yes, I think my main concern for the cycle that we're in is that for years, the wellbeing program, the wellbeing solutions, the wellbeing benefits, yes, all remuneration package design, the way in which jobs are created, I'd love to get onto that subject as well, are all seen in a very practical, tactical sense without understanding the humanity of what's behind it and what it feels like to experience those things in the context of the work environment. The short answer to your question is, unfortunately, yes, it is. It's a tough thing, I think, for well-meaning people to take on board. That all that all I knew 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was that it was like, why isn't well-being working? It should be. I can see what it should be doing. I don't understand why it isn't. It's taken me 10 years of reading lots of books and lots of research to go, okay, it's not as simple as, and so the question I was asking was valid, but my prior understanding was not valid. It was not as sound, wasn't based in a full appreciation of the way things are. So it's to take nothing away from the people who are taking those steps and are attempting to do the right things. Thank you for trying. But when it fails, don't feel that it's a personal slight on you. You haven't made any, haven't done anything wrong. It wasn't a wrong decision. It's the nature of the influence that you're under, that people are trying to sell you those solutions and claiming that they're delivering the answers, and they're not, without you taking a step back and looking at the broader picture.
It's important. I know I asked quite a tough question there that alludes to potentially some people doing things the wrong way, but fundamentally, I also believe that a lot of people are well-intentioned, and this is kind of just the way things have been done, and this is what people are saying. And the workplace wellbeing market is huge. It's in the tens of billions a year, and this research that is coming out now, the Oxford study I mentioned earlier, like that only came out this year, and a lot of the data is quite new, and it's not that people are doing things necessarily wrong. They're well-intentioned. They are trying to help their people, and there's so many people out there trying to do that it is such a complex topic, and there is no right answer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of answers, and what works for one company will potentially fail in another company, and it's just about understanding people at the end of the day, understanding the lovely little ecosystem that you've built in your business and what that means and how that affects people. But I know we're starting to close on up, but you mentioned how we create jobs there, and you wanted to touch on that. It's a fascinating topic, so
it's an
jump on in.
example of where we miss the point of what it was required to create a wellbeing. So I haven't looked at, you may have the statistics better than I do in terms of what the levels of burnout are right now and how stressed people are feeling it.
63% of people are currently showing at least one symptom of burnout in the work.
So it's a very significant problem, and it's not caused by the fact they haven't got the right benefits. And it's not caused by the fact that they can't go and source help if things go wrong. It's around the experiences that they have in the workplace on a day-to-day basis. So I think helping them to understand what's causing that, what the nature of the environment is that creates that problem. And one of those is control and the ability to act with some element of personal power in the workplace. And Rob Baker's been very big about playing the job crafting approach, and he's done a great job. And Bob Merberg's work, I love the way in which he does it. And the focus there is on give people the power to shape the way in which they are at work. Now, the traditional response from a manager and a leader is, but I need to get this done, and I need to control how that's done, otherwise it won't get done. And that mindset is where, if we can create a shift or a break in things is to say, you don't have to tell people what to do to get the job done. You need to create the vision and the outcome that you need from the team and let them live into it, let them feel it. Because even within the specifics of job specification, it might be that by sitting around the table and said, guys, if you had a choice about what you wanted to do, what would get you out of bed? Here's the project. Here's what we've got to achieve. Non-negotiable. We've got to get this done. So people are going to have to do things to make this happen. But if you were to take a part of it that would really motivate you and get you out of bed in the morning, which bit would you like? And from that, create a specification for what somebody does during the day. Sure, there'll be the dregs of the stuff at the bottom that somebody's got to do, and it may not be the best part of getting the project done. But if you've got this to go into work for and get it done, getting the other bit done that just has to be done in order to get the project done, well, okay, I've got to do that. Somebody had to do that. And the process that you've gone through, the empowering process of saying, let's solve this together rather than being told what to do, creates a completely different mindset in the way in which you approach the work. So when we work with teams, we're very much telling the manager to take a step back from managing and taking a step forward into leading, as in creating a context for the individuals to craft the way in which, or shape the way in which they work on a day-to-day basis, so that instead of getting up in the morning and going, oh boy, here's another day in the office, here's another day at the factory, whatever it is, it's great, can't wait to get in. What am I doing today? And thinking about it on the way in. And instead of my vision, hope, aspiration for this all is that this horrible word of work-life balance disappears because the distinction between life and work is removed. You live at work. You don't. I used to be. So I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. So pull me back if I go horribly wrong.
For it.
When I used to go to work, I became a different person. When I used to go to work, I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself now. When I was going to somewhere else, you walk in through the door, dressed in a tie and a shirt and a jacket and suit. Your demeanor changes. The way in which you communicate with people changes. Why? Because I'm being buffeted and influenced by the culture and the people around me to behave in line with that. How about the experience that we go to work instead and we're just ourselves? I do what I do day in, day out because it's not just me, but I'm a very small team. So I can be how I want to be on a day. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm looking forward to getting into the office and seeing what's the priority for the day and moving on. Larger organizations can create that too by giving some more control, authentic control to whatever. Let me be clear, it has to be within the boundaries of performance. So it's still about getting the outcome that you're interested in, but instead of setting rails that are rules, somewhat sort of designed to keep people hemmed in and stopping people misbehaving, because you're assuming that people will misbehave if you don't set those rules. And instead you say, here's what we want you to achieve. Can you do it? Yes, we can. Right. Off you go. This is what, and be very clear. We want this by this date, whatever. Set the parameters so that nobody's in any doubt and can't come back at the end of the process and say, well, that's not what I expected. You've still got, that as the vision. But how you do it, there's a lot of potential in that element.
I'm really glad you brought that up, and job crafting, and it's something I've encountered as well. Some people have hesitant to the concept because they worry some things won't get done. But it comes back to what is engagement? If you want people engaged in your business and your mission, and we mentioned purpose before, if people aren't engaged with that, then obviously they may not do other things. Will they or won't they do this from an authoritative point of view? It's, if they believe in what they're doing, they're not going to mind doing those other small things. Like an example I've used in workshops in the past was when I was running a bar back in Brisbane, Australia. I was working 14, 15, 16-hour days some days, and I wouldn't recommend that in any way. I would be the first one in. I would set the bar up. I'll do the prep, and I would work all the way through to close, and I would get a break in there. It should be clear there. I wasn't working that nonstop. I did have a chance to sit down, but every day that I worked those long shifts, I would be the one mopping the floor at the end of the shift. And it's one of those jobs that, potentially a bar owner will be like, oh, who's going to mop the floors? Who's going to take the bins out? But for me, like, I loved working with that team, and I loved working at that bar. And it gave me a sense of self-satisfaction to see them sitting on the other side of the bar, taking their first sip of their beer after they finished a hard day's work, because we were all in it together. But it gave me that satisfaction of doing that last thing and seeing them sit down, relax, but also to close the day out. And I know not every workplace does have an open and close like, a hospitality business does, and, be more project based that goes over time. But there are these things that people will gravitate towards, and some people will do anyway, because, it may bring them a little bit of, clarity, or, they like hanging out with spreadsheets for a few hours because it just gives them, peace of mind. Like, it's comes back to understanding your people and, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. And when you try and box people in too much, then you are trying to stop bad behavior rather than empowering people to be their best. And especially when, I could go on another tangent here, but especially when it comes to things like neurodiversity as well, like, trying to box people in who probably don't fit into a traditional box, you're not going to get the best out of them. It's not going to be a very inclusive workplace. Understanding, where they can bring value, because there are so many talented people out there who don't fit in boxes. Like you look at some of the most innovative people who have changed this world, and they probably don't fit in a box. And I think a lot of businesses are missing out on a huge amount of talent by not, you don't have to make your entire organization something to do with job crafting, but doing just a little bit and understanding your people's strengths and weaknesses and leaning into that is something that can be super powerful.
Yeah, I think we could probably do a whole session on neurodiversity as well. It comes down to recognizing the fact that individuals have different powers, have different strengths, bring different things to the workplace. And even within the context of a fixed project, a fixed requirement, this is what we've got to do. We've got to build this bridge by this date. Otherwise, we're not going to get paid for the contract, and it's going to reflect badly on us building future bridges and whatever. Even within that, there's scope to allow the individuals to express themselves, to be wholly in the project, as opposed to serving a function that has been defined in a box for them just to do. I've been told to do that. I will go in and do it. You know how motivating that is? Not at all. But if I have defined the box and it's got wiggly bits and things over here, or my particular mindset is that I just thrive on the numbers and the generation, let me just focus on the numbers while you guys get on with putting the rivets into the steel. There'll be something that lights people's lives up. I just want your example for yourself. Remind me, I don't know if you've heard about it, but in relation to the, being part of the All Blacks team, it's one of the privileges of being captain, that you sweep the changing room after the end of the game. There's two aspects to that: the privilege of being part of a high-performing team, and the humbleness of being able to accept the mundane jobs as part of that bigger picture. It keeps you grounded, and it reminds you why you're there. So those good things as well. I think there's a lot of scope right now, which COVID gave us the kickstart to this, and I feel, and I don't know if you're feeling the same, that there's been some kickback, some attempts. There's lots of organisations that are pulling people back into the office, and lack of trust around, are you actually really doing what you say you're doing? Well, focus on the outcomes. If you trust people to do it and you measure them on their outcomes, you're going to know it. But there are a variety of reasons why that might not always be easy. But if you keep that line of thinking, then you're going to start creating a workplace that people actually want to be part of, and your retention levels are going to go up and your engagement levels are going to go up and performance is going to go up. So it's worth focusing on.
My dad's going to love that you've
I'm sorry.
to the All Blacks
the All
captain.
Blacks into an Aussie conversation. I'm sorry about that.
My dad's from New Zealand, so I think he watches pretty much every All Blacks game. So I will take that. And it's not actually something I thought about. I know of the book. I know of the theories in the book, but I've not actually read it. And it's not a connection I've made in the past, but I might go read it now, because it aligns perfectly with that example. So yeah, All Blacks captain, I can take that. Might need to learn the haka one day, but yeah, anyway, let's move on from that. I feel like we could have a conversation for quite a few hours, and maybe we can do part 2 in the future. But, what are you looking forward to? What does 2025 look like for you, and how can people reach out to chat some more?
My current reading, I've actually gone back in time a little bit. I've picked up Angela Duckworth's book on grit, and I'm just reading through that at the moment. And I've just got to a section where I thought, this is me. This is where I am now. I'm on a mission, and my persistence levels are high. The aim for 2025 is very much around. We have a concept, a training program called Change Agents, which is about teaching people how change happens in reality, what conditions are necessary for human beings to start doing something different in a collective sense as well as an individual sense. And that program exists. We've got it up with the National Wellness Institute in the US, very much focused on wellness. We've developed an agnostic version, which is going up through a number of other platforms, sits on our own training platform as well. And next year is very much around bringing that to life. It's been what I've been doing since 2013, but I'm finally getting to the stage where I can stand up something more than just Colin Consulting Limited and around it, and getting the product out there in a format that we think is, even though it's online, it goes through processes, it's got exercise, it's practical and so on, that we hope people will find engaging to the point at which not only do they take the course, they actually apply the exercises and they get the benefit of it in the workplace. We've tried to take all the change things that we know and put it into the change training course, which kind of makes sense there. So that's the main thing. The journey has always been to step a little bit further away from consulting with stuff that pays the bills and try and create the something that's really valuable, that just resonates with people, that's not quite as time consuming as doing all the training. But we'll see where that goes. That's what's lighting us up. We've got many partnerships that we're very grateful for, that we're working with and for, and we're keeping those warm and alive. So we'll see where 2025 takes us.
Amazing. And how can people learn more about that?
Virtuosity.com is the website. Please go there. If you want to contact me personally, it's colin@virtuosity.com. You might need to put the spelling up for that. Look for me on LinkedIn. Always appreciate connections there. I post fairly regularly on LinkedIn, some of my thoughts. So happy to be connected or followed on LinkedIn as well.
Definitely a LinkedIn worth following. With that, thank you so much. And I imagine we'll be talking again quite soon.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, as always, to connect with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks so much, Cole.
Let's get to work.